All righty then. So we're down to Smackdown from Friday night, September 30th, the last day of the month. They were in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Do you know that's the first time that I ever went to Canada? I went to Winnipeg.
The very first time you went to Canada?
The very first time, because I'm trying to think what year it was. Crockett had done 2 shows in Canada around Ontario in 1987, and I was off for those shows because I had been suspended for burning Ronnie Garvin with the fireball, and I was in Hawaii. And that's where they took Crockett's plane, and the APU unit that controlled the heating and air burned out, and the cabin filled up with smoke, and everybody was panicking. And if I'd have been on that flight, I'd never got on another airplane. But I wasn't there. So this was, I think it was like 1988-ish. It was, Crockett was running Winnipeg for some reason, and he was using Tony Condello as the local promoter. And Tony Condello is famous in some circles for the death tours of the northern Canada provinces where they go over the roads that are, like frozen lakes, and they can only access this part of the world like 3 or 4 months out of the year, whatever. But he was based out of Winnipeg, and he'd been around the wrestling business for a long time, had wrestled, had helped promote for Vern and the AWA. And they sent me up there by myself, Crockett's office did, to do advanced publicity because it's the first time we'd been in the market. And remember, I guess, Crockett had stopped running Toronto. He had the talent trade deal with the Tunnies, but he had stopped that a couple of years before we went to work for him. And so anyway, point is, I'd never been to Canada. So they send me up there. I'm going to get there, if the show was on Saturday night, I got in on like Thursday night. And Tony Condello is going to take me all around Friday. We did radio. I think we did a newspaper interview. We might have stopped at a children's hospital. What a typical wrestling advanced publicity stuff, right? But I asked, well, what hotel should I stay at? And Condello had said on the phone, I talked to him before I went up there, the such and such hotels where all the boys stay. So I fly up there, I get a car, I get to the fucking thing, I check in, and I see what I think is like a sports bar in the parking lot next door. I think, well, at least I'll have something to eat. I go over there. It's a fucking strip club. It was a strip club. I'd never been to Canada, much less a Canadian strip club. But it looked like, from the outside, like a normal, like I said, sports bar or whatever. But I walk in the front of it, and there's, naked women up on a stage. And I'm thinking, well, shit, now, does anybody know me in Winnipeg? Should I be here? Am I going to get beat up by some drunks? Fuck it. I just went back to the hotel and got a pizza. I wasn't opposed to the titties. I was opposed to who might know me and I might have heat with that was in the audience. But later on at the show, I found out that shouldn't have been a concern because apparently nobody knew who the fuck we were up there at that point. Anyway, so finally we do all the publicity, on the day before the show and everything. And then Condello tells me, he said, well, there's a kid here in high school that wants to do an interview with you for his school paper. And I said, tell him to call me. Give him the hotel number. Tell him to call my room. Because I'm not going to go, honestly, after this long day and this trip, meet with some high school kid and sit down and do a big interview for the school paper, right? But I did it over the phone. And he was a nice young man. And I was nice to him. And I didn't think anything more about it. And I found out, was it 5 or 6 years later, when I ran into the kid again, guess who the kid was that interviewed me over the phone for his high school newspaper?
Mauro Ranallo?
No. A kid named Chris Irvine.
Get out of here, really? I never heard that.
Yes, he told me when I brought them down to Knoxville, him and Lance, to talk to him about coming into Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He said, we've spoken before. When's that? I interviewed you for my high school newspaper when you were in a hotel in Winnipeg. And since that I've only been in a hotel in Winnipeg at that point in my life once. I knew it was him.
Did he spend the whole interview telling you how smart he is?
No, amazingly enough, it was actually a normal interview with a normal high school student, just whatever happened to him after that. But nevertheless, so we're in Winnipeg for Smackdown. And you know, I'm feeling conflicted, Brian, because old Madcap Moss, he's not with Corbin now. He's not wearing the goofy outfit. He looks like a great athlete. He's got an upside. He doesn't suck in the ring, but they're still calling him Madcap Moss, and I just refuse to fucking say Madcap again. That'll be the last time you hear it. So he's Moss from now on. But Zayn and Solo started out with a tag match against Ricochet and Moss. And Zayn is playing up the asshole with the badass, bodyguard perfectly. And the cocky, and I mean, everything he's doing lately has been gold. Solo, he's the Usos' younger brother, apparently legitimately. He's not that big. Of course, he's a Samoan. And he's serious. He's acting serious about this. He's got the facials. He looks great. I wanted to like him more in this match even than I did. Not to say there's anything wrong with him, but it was a lot of punch and kick. And I'm just thinking, Jacob Fatu in this spot would be $1 million player that they could probably actually work for about a year and a half and end up splitting and having Roman Reigns against Jacob Fatu and gross millions of dollars on pay-per-view. Because Solo is serious and he's a good athlete and his work so far is okay. I'd like to see a little more variety. But he's got intensity, but he doesn't look like, I guess, like a lunatic.
He looks like a junior Uso.
He doesn't look like somebody that would lose control of himself and eat your face, even if he is a Samoan. And he might very well do that, but he doesn't look like it, whereas Jacob Fatu does. I'm just thinking if for an enforcer in the Samoan family there, they've just continued to overlook the obvious that's right in front of them. Anyway, they have this match. They do a big dive by, Ricochet, and they go to the break in under 4 minutes. They come back. There's heat on Ricochet. Like I said, Solo, okay, a lot of punch and kick. Then they just did simultaneous tags. No real hot tag. They just, let's both just tag out and start over. And old Moss made his comeback, and they did a good finish. They had the people going. The crowd was behind Sammy, even though he's obviously the heel. He's the most fun to watch, so they gravitate to him. And they did a couple of falses. Moss caught Sammy with a jackhammer, and Solo saved it. And then Ricochet was going to do a dive, but Sammy tripped him. And then Moss got on him, so the referee went with Sammy and Moss. Ricochet went for the dive anyway, and Solo threw a chair and caught Ricochet in midair and threw him over the railing out in the people, or out in the timekeepers area that everybody gets thrown in. And then hit a spin kick and a rock bottom on Moss, 1, 2, 3. So I'm like, Jesus Christ. Moss is a giant. He's jacked. He looks great. He's hopefully getting a fresh look and maybe a fresh name soon. And Mighty Mouse is his partner, and they beat Moss instead of Ricochet. So, and then Solo gets back on and gets extra heat on Moss after the fact. So they beat him up afterwards too. Again, who's picking the fucking talent that gets pushed and who's picking the talent that gets punked out? Because I'm thinking they need a trip to the ophthalmologist. Your thoughts?
Well, again, Ricochet got signed because he had a lot of buzz off the indies, and they pushed him from the moment he got there in NXT, and then on the main roster, he's run into the problems that other people have. Madcap Moss was brought up with a comedy gimmick.
Maybe that should be Mad Cop, and he could dress up like a police officer.
Well, maybe better than what he's done. Be the goofy sidekick to a goofy character, And now here he is again, same name, but he's now dressing like a wrestler. He's in great shape. We still don't know what else he could do, if he could do a good promo or anything else, really. But obviously, Ricochet's been a bigger priority for WWE.
I mean, Ricochet's wonderful middle card babyface, good for the kids, does the flying stuff. Let's not seriously pretend like he needs to be a main event star.
Does Madcap need to be a main event star? Do you think just based on look and a change of name he could be? Or what do you...
Based on look and size and athletic ability, and with a name change, yes, based on those things, he could be a main event star. Now, is he coachable? Does he have a good attitude? Is he going to continue to progress? That's a question, but you've got the template to work with. You have material here. Ricochet, wonderfully talented acrobat, and we saw a couple weeks ago he can sell and have a wrestling match when somebody leads him to do one. But are you going to ever buy Ricochet versus Roman Reigns, Ricochet versus Brock Lesnar, Ricochet versus Bobby Lashley, Ricochet versus Gunther? Let's be honest. And no, and a lot of people will say, well, look at Rey Mysterio. Again, Rey Mysterio was revolutionary with what he did and grew up in a wrestling family and had the psychology and the once in a generation or once in a lifetime combination of ability and charisma. Ricochet's a good acrobat. The fact that he doesn't have a mask hurts him because there's that blank average face. And yes, you love the flips, but it's like the Flying Greek Mike Pappas when he did the headstand on the top turnbuckle and then kicked off and landed in the middle of the ring and hit a guy with 2 or 3 quick drop kicks. That was great, but it was in the third match, because if you put Mike Pappas against fucking the main event guy in any territory, it would have looked ridiculous because Pappas was 5'6" and only about 190 pounds, which meant he had about 30 on Ricochet. Anyway, good finish and all that stuff, except they beat the wrong guy. But then in the back, Solo and Sami Zayn are walking down the hall, and they're going to the Bloodline locker room, and they meet Jey Uso coming out. And then Jey calls Sami off and says, hey, I see right through you. I know what you're all about. If you put my family in jeopardy, well, then I'm going to, Sami just say, hey, take it up with Roman. So I love the conflict that they've got, except I wish they would come up with more creative ways to impart this information to the viewer than to just have the guys saying it right in front of a television camera. And that means that Roman Reigns can see this anytime he wants to, so we're almost expected to believe that Roman Reigns is stupid or ignorant or not paying attention to what's going on. You know, they don't have to all just come out and speak right in front of a camera. Can't you eavesdrop on a guy in a corner on a cell phone or whatever? Nevertheless, what do you think about Karrion Kross? Brian, is he going to be a main event guy? How's his promos? How's his work? How's his package, which includes Scarlett? Tell me your thoughts.
Well, there's a lot there. I've definitely thought different things about him at different times. I think he has a good look. I'm not ready to say he'll be a main eventer. I think the fire angle last week was botched, although in general, him and Scarlett have been pretty good as a package together. I think he loses a lot without her, and we've seen that in real time.
Yeah.
What were your other questions?
Well, just basically the presentation. Do you think, because a lot of people are saying, oh, he's going to be a top guy, and we know Triple H obviously brought him back with that intention, and they're pushing him. I think the hair is not doing him any favors. I think he looked more extreme bald, more harsh bald. We haven't seen that much of his work. I know somebody's going, oh, I've seen him wrestle a million times. Well, I'm talking about me. I haven't seen him that many times, but I don't have anything against it. I think whether he becomes a superstar or not, they're going to put him in the main event, so he's going to be a main event guy. But whether he becomes a real main event player and a superstar depends or not on whether he develops the ability to do these promos like the spooky video that they did, whether he can do these promos in this style with no script, sounding like he really means it. It's him. It's coming off the top of his head. That's going to be the difference, because the spooky video and the atmospheric entrances and all the different ways they're presenting him, that's great. That's fine. But when he verbally delivers this like he did in this video interview package, verbally his delivery sounds like that he prepared these remarks and he's reciting them. He's better at it than a lot of the guys. But he's still not there where when Scott Hall was Razor Ramon and they gave him an interview they wanted him to say, obviously back in those days you'd still change a lot, but Scott Hall sounded like Razor Ramon and the shit was coming off the top of his head, right? It was not prepared. It didn't sound rehearsed. Same thing with Nash. Same thing with any Attitude Era star, any major territory star. The spooky stuff they're doing with Kross will work, but only if it feels to the people like it's him rather than he's a guy playing this part. And I don't hear the inflections. I don't hear the emphasis, the meaning in the right place to where it sounds like this is him. And I guarantee you he couldn't do this promo unless he or someone else had written it down and then he is memorized it and is reciting it. In other words, unless you can do this from scratch, when somebody walks up to you with a camera and a microphone and it would sound the same way as if it was written and prepared, blah, 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 then you're not, it's not going to get over for you. You have to be that person, and I don't believe the things he's saying to me. Now that I've said those things, do you see what I'm talking about, or did I do a crummy job of explaining?
No, you do. I do see what you're saying, and I agree with you for the most part. And, when he first returned, I remember I didn't watch SmackDown that week, but I saw a photo going around of him. I guess he came out of the crowd and he attacked Drew McIntyre or something, but he was in his street clothes. And he looked like a crazy badass who jumped the rail and got involved with a wrestler. And I think that's one of the frustrating things with him and Scarlett. They don't need the spooky shit. And we've seen way too much spooky stuff. We don't need to see any more wrestlers with smoke machines. Like, that can go away. We've seen a lot of it. We've seen too much lately.
Back in the old days, the wrestlers didn't need smoke machines. They just opened the door of their car.
Well, I think part of the problem is Scarlett and Karrion Kross don't need all that. But because they have all that, it doesn't make them stand out like it would if they didn't have it.
That was very deep.
Thank you.
As Mama Cornette used to say, well, that's a deep subject.
Well, the rest of it will be surface level. I promise you that.
All righty. Well, we'll do the best we can to be completely surfacey. Anyway, Austin Theory, what have they done to my boy? He did a backstage interview, and it was more noticeable here because he's a guy that wants to look at people he's talking to and wants to, as a cocky heel, you could tell he was trying not to look at the camera because they're still telling, for whatever reason that Vince had in his demented mind, the talent still in a pre-tape backstage with an interviewer will not look at the camera because Vince didn't like that. So he's trying to look everywhere around this giant camera on the shoulder of a 6-foot fucking grown adult man that's 3 feet in front of him. But he knocked Drew McIntyre and said Wales is Europe's Winnipeg, talking about his match in Cardiff, and that was pretty good. Winnipeg is Canada's Kansas City, by the way. And so he knocks Drew McIntyre, and then Drew comes up behind him and puts his hand on his shoulder. And when Theory and looks around, Drew McIntyre just says, "You and me in the ring now." And they go to the break. So now Drew McIntyre can just walk up and make a match with somebody on a network TV program with 3 minutes notice. So it's good to know he's got that power, because when we come back, there it is. There's the match. Theory versus Drew McIntyre. And this is ridiculous. This guy was going to be the chosen one. He got the Money in the Bank briefcase. He was Vince's protege. He's a tremendous worker.
Which one are you talking about?
Theory.
Oh.
He's got the physical tools. Everything. And now just whatever he did to piss whoever off since Vince has been gone, he's a flunky. And the only reason he's clinging to that Money in the Bank briefcase by a thread, and that's the only thing he's got in his back pocket. And he had that before they started this teardown project. So now it's Theory versus Drew, and Theory for backup brings out Otis and Gable. So they start the match, and again, he's great at it, but Theory is presented like an ineffectual flunky. Chop Drew McIntyre. McIntyre doesn't sell it and looks at him. Bumps Theory around effortlessly at will. Theory gets on him for a good 30 seconds, and then McIntyre comes back. And then Beals Gable into the ring. And then Otis drags the fucking guy out, and they just call for the bell, disqualification. So a nothing match, short. Theory gets little. He's accompanied by mid-card comedy figures. And then it's a cheap DQ. And they start getting on Drew 3-on-1. This whole thing has been lame. And then music plays, and here comes Johnny Sameface. And I'm like, my God, now Johnny Sameface is making a save for Drew McIntyre? But fortunately, no, he didn't. He got in with a flurry. But then the heels took him down and got on that fucking minuscule dwarf for a second. And then more music plays, and here comes Kevin Owens, and now there's the big save. And all three baby faces are back up on their feet, and all three heels leave with their tail stuck between their legs by the end of this thing. So they kept trying to do something in this segment, but it didn't do anything for anybody. It certainly didn't do anything for Austin Theory. It didn't really do anything for Drew McIntyre. Gable and Otis are past their expiration date at this point to begin with. It lasted barely a few minutes, and all they did was set up a 6-man tag for the main event of this same program with these people that we've already been looking at for fucking 20 fucking minutes. Between the promo and the match and the angle and the blah saves and the... It's like they've only got 6 people on their roster, Brian. Same ones every week in multiple segments for multiple periods of time.
And now it's multiple shows. Because these guys are on Raw.
Yeah, because now which the brand split's ignorant to begin with, and we've talked about that, but they only observe it whenever they want to, and otherwise people just show up on whatever program.
Besides what you think about Gargano, and I'm not a big fan of his either, but if you look at this objectively, maybe I'm wrong, but are the fans even reacting to him? They play his music, he ran out there, but did they pop for Johnny Gargano coming out there, or did they just sit there and watch?
Well,
because they pipe in noise, obviously, but you can kind of tell what's real and what isn't.
The ones that liked him before like him again, and the people that didn't like him before don't give a shit about him now. And it depends on, they brought him back in, where was it, Toronto, with the biggest per capita audience of really smart fans. Toronto's a place that would like Gargano, and if they went to fucking St. Petersburg, well, no, Florida, he's probably all his family down there. If they went to fucking Burleson, Texas, they might not be as fond of him. But again, if anybody is deluding themselves into thinking that Johnny Sameface is going to be any kind of difference maker in ratings or tickets or pay-per-view or fucking merchandise or whatever the fuck. Come on. They did a show-long bit in the back that may lead to something we want to see with the maximum male models, Max Dupree and Lady Dupree and whatever the
Maxine.
fuck.
Maxine Dupree.
There you go. Yeah, and Mansoir and Mansour, and they were going for the longest, world's record for the longest pose. And they kept going back to this, but each time Max Drake, Max Dupree, LA Knight, Eli Drake, he'd come in and show disgust with them. And obviously they're just trying to get out of this as quickly as possible because they're not even going to, I guess, do this live in front of the people. They're just backstage, get it over with and get him away from this shit. But they will by the end of the night, hopefully. So we're going to see LA Knight again. Los Lotharios had a 3-minute match against Skid Row, and they're not letting them rap on the way to the ring anymore. Did you notice that?
Oh, you mean Hit Row?
What'd I say?
You said Skid Row. I started thinking, is there a tag team named Skid Row? I didn't even remember that you were talking about Hit Row.
Whatever row they're in. They're in the general admission seats. They didn't let them rap anymore on the way to the ring. Thank fuck.
Thank God.
But 3 minutes, Death Row, Hit Row, the Row House, they all won. God, the fat guy, old AJ.
Top Dollar.
Brother, boy, howdy. He's convinced he knows what the fuck he's doing, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, look, should have spent more time in wrestling school, less time shaking down John Pantozzi.
There you go. It'd come back to haunt him. Yeah, they suck. They're really bad. Ronda Rousey was in the back and walked through a promo for about 20 seconds and then came out and had a match with Natalya. And did you notice the most notable thing about the Ronda Rousey versus Natalya match?
Was it Ronda wearing the red shirt?
No, it was Ronda Rousey's entrance to the ring with music came at the top of the 9 p.m. hour. So they may not have any fucking very many stars on this program, but they know where to put them. Again, a simple Vinceism. Top of the hour and to a lesser extent, the bottom of the hour, you need a star headed to the ring or in the ring. So, again, Natalya tried here. Ronda took over almost immediately. Her judo is great. Her work is herky-jerky and awkward. It's not smooth at all. She's not getting better. I don't know that she's trying. I think, by everything you can see from Ronda Rousey, that the bloom is off the rose for her on this wrestling thing. And she's doing it now because she signed a contract. I don't see her having a ton of fun. I don't see her trying to improve. I don't see her going out there and just goddamn shucking the corn all the way down to the cob on the promos and just really being into this. It's like, get it over with. And that's the way we feel watching her at this point. Natalya did a good job getting her through this, but finally Ronda slipped out of a slam, got the ankle lock, got a tap out in, 4 minutes, or was it 4 minutes? And then music plays, and here comes Liv Morgan out with a baseball bat. So now you have this preposterously plastic, painted up Barbie, all 5'2" and 92 pounds of her, that brought out and dragging a baseball bat. I thought it might because it was too heavy for her to lift. And then they stand there and face each other, her and Ronda. And then she goes to swing the bat at Ronda, and Ronda just boots her in the stomach and stops her. And then she goes to swing again, and Ronda ducks out of the way, and Liv Morgan hits the ring post 3 feet above where Ronda Rousey's head was. I mean, there was no chance of an accident here. Why would you even do something like that? You can see where the human being in front of you is, right? So swing, and if they don't move, apologize, right? But if you know they're going to move and you're making any attempt to try to make it look good, you're going to swing somewhere in the vicinity of where their head was, right? Try to go maybe right over the top or to the side or just hope they duck or whatever. No, let's 3 feet just to make sure. And then Ronda Rousey gave Liv Morgan, all 92 pounds of her Piper's Pit finish on the floor. And 10 seconds later, by an actual count, Liv Morgan is up fighting with Ronda with a tug-of-war over the bat. And then Ronda flipped her over the rail and walked off, picking her shorts out of her crotch. But Liv comes from behind, and they have a big pull-apart. This would have been good with anybody but Liv Morgan.
But on the bright side, she's pretty good with the bat. Maybe the Phillies can sign her.
Oh, good Lord. They have women. Lacey Evans, Charlotte, Rhea Ripley. Bianca Belair. You could buy any of these people against Ronda Rousey. But it's Liv Morgan. What, does Liv Morgan have pictures of somebody with a sheep? Or
maybe in Japan, maybe here. I'm not quite sure. But, I think part of the problem, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not a big WWE modern fan, but I feel like Liv Morgan's less over this week than she was a month ago, than she was 2 months ago, as they were trying to build her into something here. I feel like the more we've seen of her, the less over she is with their audience, unless I'm wrong, but based on the reaction, based on watching this stuff, I'm not sure what they're doing. But look, the women's divisions everywhere are a mess. You brought up Charlotte. We haven't seen Charlotte in forever. Who's the other name? Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans got put through a table last week. The first time I've ever seen a woman destroyed like that on TV. It was on this show last week by Liv Morgan.
By Liv Morgan.
Yeah, so we don't even know if we'll see her again. Because what a way to write someone off TV than that.
Well, so thankfully, here came Imperium. And they started doing an in-ring promo about the Brawling Brutes. And next week, the rematch is going to be between Gunther and Sheamus. And as I was watching these guys stand in the ring and the way they talk and the expressions, and Gunther is just amazing, I'm thinking if Bill Watts had these guys, or Eddie Graham had these guys, they would be communist officers or Nazi soldiers. They would need police protection in and out of the arenas everywhere they went. They would have snipers staking out the interstate, waiting for them to drive out of town. These guys could have been the hottest fucking heels that anybody's ever seen. But they're wasted in sports entertainment, in the modern day environment. They're too good for this. And it just, I can see goddamn Gunther getting death threats, just coming to the ring and brutalizing the local territory babyface and swearing allegiance to whoever the fucking commandant is of the goddamn, his force or whatever.
Horst Hoffman.
Horst Hoffman. There you go. But anyway, they barely do a minute, and then here comes the Brawling Brutes music, but Sheamus comes out alone because Ridge and Butch are in Florida. And Sheamus does a brief and fairly uninspired promo. And then they get in the obligatory fight because, again, the thing that WWE television, Raw or SmackDown, needs more than anything else is a complete revamp of the way they format everything and the way that everything happens the same way every week.
Yes.
Interview, interruption, match, either then or later on in the show. Match finish is guys making a comeback, somebody distracts him, turns into a finish, whatever. But in this case, they had a fight where Sheamus took a shillelagh and knocked out Kaiser and Vinci, and I don't know why this guy's name is Italian and he's but nevertheless, he knocks them out with a blow each and then gets in the ring with Gunther and has a fight with Gunther, and then the Stooges come back just at the right time after they'd been down forever and disappeared, and they get heat on Sheamus, and trash talking and a powerbomb Sheamus. But this was by the numbers. Nobody tried to help. They sweetened the booze. The heels walk off, and Sheamus gets on the microphone and says, "Is that all you got?" And the heels come back and beat the fuck out of him again and hit him with his own shillelagh and walk out again. So that worked. But between the sweetened booze and the sports entertainment presentation, on the same program, you have security. And this is not just WWE, it's AEW. You have security breaking up shit between women and children that doesn't go on for 10 seconds. And then you have 5-minute attempted murders that nobody says a peep about, and there's no consistency. I love Gunther, but there's almost nobody for him to work with. Where you get to see the real Gunther. And then they have to do this shit in the middle. What do you think?
Well, Jim, they had that one match in Cardiff, Wales, and I wasn't as crazy about it as you were. And now we'll get to see them on TV domestically. I'm actually looking forward to that. I would like to see them one more time and give it another chance with multiple commercial breaks.
I liked Gunther in that match. Sheamus held up his part, but people were saying it was the greatest WWE match of modern times or whatever. No, I'll tell you what, I still pick Gunther and Ilya Dragunov in that match they had on whatever that NXT Big Show was about a year and a half ago as one of the goddamnedest matches I've seen from anybody anywhere in years. But go ahead.
What do you do when you have guys that are on your roster that have been there for a while, that fans recognize, that some fans really like, but they've been there for such a long time, but you don't have new bodies to fill those roles? Like someone like Sheamus. And I hate to bring it up, but someone like Natalya earlier. Natalya's great in the ring. We've been watching her for 15 years?
Yeah.
She's been there a long time, and it's not like they have other people to put out there, but when they come out, sometimes you're like, okay, I know what this is because I've been watching this for a very long time. Sheamus. He's had different gimmicks, different songs, different entrances, but it's Sheamus. Been watching this guy forever. I'm sick of it. But again, to my earlier point, you said who's Imperium going to work with? They don't have that many people they could put in there. So
well,
what do you do?
That's their fault. The talent situation today is the fault of the WWE. Their talent situation, because they've had access going back 20 years. How many times did we say, well, this guy at OVW, that guy at OVW would have been fantastic if they'd had a chance, if they'd have not hamstrung them with a ridiculous gimmick or stupid presentation or brought them in, treated them like job guys. Whether it be Matt Morgan or the Bashams or Dinsmore or Jeter, all these guys would still be youthful and would be on the tail end of their careers that they never really ended up having because they were all wasted. And they've been doing the same thing since then. And so it's their fault that they don't have more talent. But it's also their fault that the fans, as you said, get too familiar and too used to and too bored with the talent. Familiarity breeds contempt is the opposite of how can I miss you if you won't go away. And there's no reason why, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, as big as that company has become, and with all the guaranteed revenue streams they have, and the fact that they don't give the talent any benefits or retirement or health or whatever the case, why couldn't they just say, look, so-and-so, Brian Last on my roster is a talent that I believe in and want to use more in the future, but he's been here. We've done just about everything with him right now. He needs a break. We are going to, in an organized fashion, figure out a way to tie up the loose ends of whatever he's doing on the show and send him home or away for 3 to 6 months. And generally home instead of away, because you're going to send a guy to Japan? Well, I wouldn't. That some guys might like that if they got sent to a foreign country. I'd say, fuck you. I didn't sign with an American company to be sent to Japan for 6 months or whatever. But just get them off your television. but don't beat them into powder before they go. And just some way or another, whether it's an injury or whether it's losing a match or whatever, give them a reason to be gone, and then bring them back with a surprise when the people might be more agreeable to seeing them again. That's it seems like what they haven't been doing when they've had the money to pay these guys is protect their investment. Everybody stays on the roster until they're moved down the card and beaten into powder and used in every possible way, and then they're released. Well, then they're not any good to anybody else, but they're not any good to the WWE unless you bring them back after 5 years when everybody's forgotten about that. If you give a guy a graceful exit of the program for just a few months when they're still reasonably in a good position, then they will come back in as good or better position because people didn't see them be torn down first. You should only beat a guy into powder when you have no more further use for him and you don't want to re-sign him and you know he's going to go somewhere else. And so that's where you beat the shit out of him first, because you don't want to give the competitor a viable drawing card. But so when you just see these people on and you can't feature them constantly and it gets tiresome, they're not protecting their investments. And because they make so few new stars, the investments of people they do have with some recognition are more important than ever. And then there's the fact that, look at the talent. Where's the next Brock Lesnar? Maybe there might not be another human being look like Brock Lesnar, but we're down to, we don't have fighters anymore. We don't have ex-football players. We don't have fucking tough guys that don't fit into society and want to get in wrestling because it's the Wild West. Those were the stars. We have small, timid, fucking performance artists that want to get into the business to be on TV and possibly pursue a career in reality television or major motion pictures. So what's going into the talent development programs is not as good as what was going into them 20 and 30 and 40 years ago either. And for all those Wild West personalities who would want to get into wrestling because they don't fit anywhere else, they'd get fired or sued if they were in wrestling now, because wrestling's like everything else now. Bunch of fucking pussies with easily hurt feelings, and you can't say boo to a goose without somebody doing an investigation. And Lord forbid that two guys have a problem and decide to fucking see who's right one way or the other, because goddamn, then they'll all be suspended. What was the question?
About guys who have been there a long time and the idea there aren't people to replace them, but they're still on TV.
Yeah, well, I suggest that Kevin Dunn and the rest of the goddamn bullshit bogus executives that have never taken a bump in their life take, at least not one in a ring, maybe off a mirror, take $3,000 or $4,000 off your $15 million that you fucking con the company out of every year to do your job, and put it in a fund to pay the wrestlers to go away for 3 to 6 months at a time, heal up their bodies, and get new again, and come back as a bigger attraction instead of a fucking stale, moldy old piece of bread. But the next match...
Speaking of moldy old piece of bread, more Smackdown.
Yes, well, Bayley and Shotzi. Shotzi's got her tank back, but I'll watch this for Bayley. I like Bayley's shit. I'm not really sure what Shotzi was doing. I can't tell if she could work or not. They did 3 minutes of back and forth and went to the break. They come back from the break, and Shotzi started her comeback with the world's first ever one-footed drop kick to the pussy. Did you see that?
I actually did not watch this match.
Okay, well...
Now I wish I had. The one time you watch a women's match and I don't, I miss this.
Shotzi rolled out of the corner to avoid Bayley. When Bayley turns around, Shotzi gets a run and goes to drop kick her. and went up as far as her right foot, kicking Bayley in the pussy, and that's as high as she got off the ground. And Bayley kind of fell back in a heap, and then she suplexed Bayley into the turnbuckles with a snap vertical suplex, so kind of on top of her head. And then Bayley jerked Shotzi off the ropes and hit her finish 1, 2, 3. And then Bayley got more heat on Shot. Now the WWE is emulating AEW. The match can never end when the heel wins, because then the heel has to get more heat. Remember, it used to be the heel will either fuck the babyface and win and leave with the heat, or the babyface would win legally and then the heel would jump on him and kick the shit out of him. Now the heel wins legally and then beats the babyface up even further. So Bayley pulled out a ladder because, of course, it's Bianca versus Bayley in a ladder match on the Extreme Rules pay-per-view next weekend. And she put Shotzi in the middle of the ladder, and Shotzi was kind enough to help put herself in it and then hold it in place. And then Bianca's music plays before Bayley can jump off the top rope onto the ladder with Shotzi in the middle of it. And Bianca ran to the ring this time instead of skipping and unfolded the ladder so that Shotzi could suddenly come back to life and roll out. You know, the ladder, when the ladder's laying on the ground, right? The ladder folds out, right? You know how ladder works. You've seen them before in the newspapers.
I have, yes.
So imagine if you're laying on one section of the ladder and the other section is on top of you. All you have to do is kind of just go push up and the ladder opens. It's not locked, right? Well, Shotzi was trapped in this thing until Bianca picked it up. And then suddenly Shotzi came back to life and rolled out. And then Bayley got on Bianca. And then Bianca came out of that and got on Bayley, and Bayley ran off. And that was that, and you didn't watch it, so I won't ask you what you thought about it. But then, finally, the best thing I saw all night, we go to the back, the models are still posing, and Max Dupree comes in and says, you know what, fuck this, and beat up the models, punched them both, and quit. So I'm done with all of y'all. So apparently, Eli Drake LA Knight is coming back because even Triple H, nobody there could possibly have seen what Vince did to this guy and thought that's the best use of this guy on our roster, and we're paying him. So that was that, and then they start the 6-man fucking tag with the goddamn group from before, Otis and Gable and Theory against Drew and Owens and Corning Fiberglass. What's the other guy's name? Ricochet. And I can't watch that 6-man tag. I've just seen their shit earlier. And that's not a main event for a network television program. So I skipped that, and that was SmackDown. What do you think, Brian?
I skipped that too, and that was SmackDown. I'm not a Gargano fan. I'm not really into Owens. And then, you know, I know they do this a lot, the idea of something happens early in the show and they build up a match later in the show, but I was already sick of seeing all these people. I want to see something else. Well, and I get there's a hurricane, so maybe that was one of the reasons why. Maybe that was one of the reasons why.
They were in Winnipeg. The hurricane was 1,000 miles away from where they were.
Well, maybe not everyone could get there is what I was going to say. A lot of wrestlers.
Who else could have been on this show that could have helped it out?
Well, I think if Butch and Ridge were there, it would have changed the entire makeup of the show. But of course, like everyone else, they've learned that Florida has no state income tax.
Nor standards, apparently.
Nor standards.
And also an insane governor, but we won't go into that. Yeah, the shows, the talent at this point is being poorly served by the television program rather than the other way around. The way these shows are formatted and that they unfold at the same pace in the same way with the same things happening with the same people every fucking week. Unless you just really like any of these individuals and just want to see them do the same thing all the time, that's what you're watching with the WWE. And I'm not shitting on Triple H. He's got plenty of work to do, and I think he realizes that, but I don't know if obviously, and even when I was there 20, 25 years ago, the creative team formats the actual show, determines what talent is on it and what they do on it. But the actual formatting of the show, the way that it's shot, the way that VTRs are interspersed, the way that the whole thing transpires, no matter who's on it, the way it's produced, and the pace of it. Kevin Dunn's had a lot to do with that, and did 25 years ago, and probably has much more to do with it now. And that's why he needs to be Old Yellard, out by the barn, because this program will never get on film. That would get ratings, especially from the boys. But until there is a concerted effort to revamp the formatting and the flow and the way that Raw and SmackDown happen and transpire in front of you, regardless of who's on it or what match is taking place or whatever, they're not going to get anywhere, because it's boring, it's dull, and it takes forever for shit to happen. And you see the same people all the time. And none of this was a hallmark of Vince McMahon's television when business was the biggest. So they've forgotten a lot of things they learned, and so did Vince. Apparently Alzheimer's will do that to you. But now they've got to reformat it bad. They need a new producer. They need new creative talent in the studio and in the production end that can hopefully make this thing look a little better. And I don't mean quality. Why, they spend a ton of money on it, but it's the most pristine, clean, homogenized, pasteurized, boring big budget production ever. I think they ought to concentrate on spending a little less money and get a little more grit and grime on this thing, and hook people with something that they may be able to believe, with some talent that they can get into. And having said that, we go back to, unfortunately, the only people wanting to get into wrestling schools these days are fucking performance artists that are 180 pounds and like to do male cheerleading routines. So what's a boy to do, Brian?
The boy will talk about more wrestling on the Drive-Thru this week.